Olivia Chen stared at her phone, her hands trembling as she typed the desperate message. Marcus, I know you're struggling too, but Mia has had a high fever for 3 days. I don't have money for medicine or to take her to the doctor. I just need $50. I'll find a way to pay you back. She hit send before she could change her mind, then collapsed against the water-stained wall of her crumbling apartment in South Boston. Rain leaked through the ceiling, forming puddles on the cracked floor. The baby monitor crackled with the weak cries of her 18-month-old daughter, too exhausted to scream anymore. Olivia's checking account showed exactly 93 cents. No medicine, no formula. The last bottle had been watered down so much it was barely more than cloudy water. She hadn't eaten in 2 days, giving every scrap of food to Mia. The eviction notice on her door gave her 7 days. Her ex-husband Daniel, a corrupt cop with connections to dangerous people, had sent an email yesterday. I know where you are. I'm coming for my daughter. And now, her only hope was her drug-addicted brother, who probably needed money more than she did. 3 miles away, in the penthouse of Cross Tower, Damian Cross's phone buzzed. The 36-year-old man glanced at the notification, expecting an update from Victor about the Benedetti situation. Instead, he found himself staring at a message clearly not meant for him. Damian frowned, running a hand through his dark hair. This number was known to exactly 5 people in the world. This was obviously a wrong number. Yet something about the raw desperation in those lines made him pause. A sick child, a mother with nothing. It reminded him of another woman, 24 years ago, who had died protecting her son from a monster. Is your daughter okay? He typed, surprising himself. When Olivia saw the response, her blood ran cold. This isn't Marcus. Wrong number. Horror washed over her as she checked the digits. She had mistyped the last number. I'm so sorry. She typed back quickly. Please ignore that. She threw her phone aside, shame burning through her exhaustion. Another failure in an endless chain of failures. Damian couldn't explain why he didn't simply move on. Perhaps it was the mention of a sick child. Or perhaps it was the welcome distraction from the war he was about to wage against his enemies. His assistant would say he was procrastinating. His dead mother would say he still had a heart buried somewhere beneath the ice. Both would be partially right. The baby has had a fever for 3 days, he typed. Have you taken her to a doctor? Olivia stared at the message, torn between suspicion and a flicker of desperate hope. Why would a stranger care? I can't afford it, she finally admitted, too tired to lie. No insurance, no money, no one. I can help, came the immediate response. No strings attached. Olivia almost laughed. In her experience, there were always strings, especially from men. Thanks, but I don't take money from strangers, she wrote back. Smart policy, Damian replied. He hesitated, then added, I'm Damian. Now I'm not a stranger. What medicine does your daughter need? Olivia stared at the message, torn between suspicion and a sliver of hope. Why would you help someone you don't know? In his penthouse, Damian looked out over the Boston skyline, the city he controlled from the shadows. Why, indeed? Let's just say I've seen what happens when mothers have no one to turn to, he replied. It wasn't the whole truth. The whole truth was that his mother had died in a pool of blood because no one had helped her. Exhaustion clouded Olivia's judgment. She hadn't slept more than 2 hours in 4 days. Mia had a persistent ear infection that needed antibiotics, but the clinic wanted $200 up front, she told him. I don't feel right about this, she added. What's your Venmo? Damian asked. Olivia hesitated, then sent her username. What did she have to lose? She could always block him if things got weird. Seconds later, her phone buzzed with a notification. Olivia gasped. This Damian hadn't sent $50. He'd sent $5,000. This is too much, she typed frantically. I can't accept this. Consider it an investment in your daughter's future, Damian replied. Take her to the doctor. Buy food. Pay your rent. One less thing to worry about. Tears sprang to Olivia's eyes. She hadn't cried when Daniel had broken her ribs. She hadn't cried when she'd fled with a 6-month pregnant belly into the rain. She hadn't cried when her mother died of cancer, leaving her truly alone. But this unexpected kindness from a complete stranger shattered something inside her. Thank you, she typed simply, unable to find adequate words. You're welcome, Olivia, Damian replied. Take care of little Mia. It wasn't until hours later, when Olivia returned from the emergency room with antibiotics and groceries, and hope for the first time in months, that she realized something that made her blood run cold. She had never told this stranger her name. She had never told him her daughter's name, and she had never mentioned that Mia was little. Who was this man who knew things he shouldn't know? And why did his help feel less like charity and more like the first move in a game she didn't understand? If you want to know what suspenseful twist happens next, like this video, share it with someone who loves a good story, and subscribe so you don't miss next parts. Because Olivia Chen had just caught the attention of the most dangerous man in Boston, and her life would never be the same. Olivia couldn't sleep that night. She sat in the worn old chair beside Mia's bed, watching her daughter breathe evenly after taking the antibiotic, while her own mind spun with thousands of questions that had no answers. He knew her name. He knew Mia's name. He even knew Mia was still little. Those were details she had never mentioned in any message. When the first light of dawn slipped through the torn curtain, Olivia reached for her phone and typed into the search bar the 3 letters that had haunted her all night. Damien Cross, Boston. The results that appeared hit her like an electric shock. Dozens of articles, images, headlines. Damien Cross, 36 years old, CEO of Cross Holdings, one of the largest real estate and entertainment conglomerates in the Northeast, estimated net worth in the billions of dollars. Olivia stared at his photo on a Forbes page. Black hair, steel cold gray eyes, features so sharp they looked carved from stone. He was handsome in a way that made people want to take a step back instead of moving closer. But it wasn't the articles about his wealth that made Olivia tremble. It was the other ones. The ones buried deeper in the search results, from unofficial outlets, anonymous forums, Damien Cross and the Shadow Empire. Cross Syndicate, a name that made Boston's underworld shudder. Rumors of enemies who vanished without a trace. Of businesses that refused to cooperate and then suddenly went bankrupt. Of a nickname people only dared whisper in the dark, the Devil of Boston. Olivia dropped the phone as if it had burned her. She had just accepted $5,000 from a Mafia boss. She had just given a Mafia boss her Venmo address, the one thing that could lead straight to her real identity. Her heart hammered out of rhythm. She had run from one dangerous man, only to stumble, by accident, into the sights of someone 1,000 times more dangerous. The phone vibrated. Olivia flinched as if she'd been caught red-handed. A new message from Damien's number. Is Mia feeling better? She stared at the screen, not knowing whether to answer or block the number immediately. But before she could decide, another message arrived. I have a proposal for you. A job. Nothing else. Before you refuse, hear me out. My sister, Elena, has lupus. She needs a private nurse with experience providing 24 hours a day care. I know you were a nurse at Massachusetts General Hospital before you resigned nearly 2 years ago. Olivia felt as if someone had poured ice water down her spine. He knew she was a nurse. He knew where she had worked. He knew exactly when she had quit. The precise moment she had run from Daniel with a 6-month pregnant belly. He had investigated her. He had known everything about her from the beginning. The next message came through. Salary of $15,000 a month. Housing included for you and Mia in my estate. Full health insurance. Security 24 hours a day. No one can touch you or your daughter while you are there. No one. Olivia read that last line again and again. No one can touch you or your daughter. As if he knew who she was running from. As if he knew about Daniel. She was shaking. She didn't know if it was fear or something else. A mad thread of hope that maybe, just maybe, the most dangerous man in Boston was the safest place for her and her daughter. She looked at Mia sleeping, looked at the crumbling apartment, looked at the eviction notice on the door. Then she looked back at the phone. Damien's final message glowed on the screen. You don't have to answer right now. Think about it. But Olivia, don't wait too long. I'm not the only one looking for you. Olivia spent the entire morning thinking about Damien Cross's offer. One part of her wanted to block his number immediately, erase every trace of this insane conversation, and pretend it had never happened. But another part of her, the part watching her daughter drink from the newly bought bottle, the part listening to rain drip steadily into the plastic bucket in the middle of the apartment, knew she did not have many choices left to refuse. She was feeding Mia lunch when her phone vibrated. A new email, from an address so familiar it made her nauseous. Daniel Morrison. Olivia opened the email with trembling hands. There were no words, only 3 photographs. The first was her apartment, taken from outside, the angle clearly showing the bedroom window where she always placed Mia's crib. The second was of Olivia carrying Mia out of the emergency room the night before, her hair disheveled, her face hollow with exhaustion. The third was Mia, just Mia, sleeping in her stroller in front of a grocery store, clearly taken from very close range. Beneath the 3 photos was a single line. I am coming. Olivia, and this time I am taking my daughter home. Olivia nearly dropped the phone. He had been watching her. He had been right here, only a few meters away, close enough to photograph her daughter without her knowing. He could have taken Mia at any moment. She clutched her daughter tightly against her chest, her heart racing, her eyes darting around the apartment, as if Daniel might step in at any second. A knock sounded at the door. Olivia screamed, sprang to her feet, shielding Mia with her body, but the voice that came through the door froze her for a different reason. Olivia, open the door. It is me, Marcus. Marcus, her brother. Olivia took a deep breath, forced herself to steady, and opened the door. Marcus Chen stood there, thinner than the last time she had seen him, eyes sunken, skin gray, the familiar signs of an addict desperate for his next fix. He stepped inside without waiting to be invited, his gaze sweeping the apartment. Do you have money? I need it now. Just 200. I will pay you back. Olivia looked at her brother, the man who once taught her how to ride a bike, who once fought bullies to protect her, now nothing more than a walking shell with dead eyes. I do not have money, Marcus. I am about to be evicted. Marcus scratched his neck, glanced at the medicine and formula on the table. But you just bought things. You have money. Who gave you money? Who gave it to you? Olivia repeated the question, her voice suddenly sharp. Marcus, how did you know I was here? I never gave you my new address. Marcus avoided her gaze. Someone asked. I just told them. They paid me. Olivia's heart seemed to stop. Who? Marcus. Who paid you? I do not know. A man. He said he was Daniel's friend. Wanted to find you to make peace. He paid $300. I needed the money, Olivia. I am sorry. Olivia stepped back as if her brother had slapped her. Marcus had sold her. Her own brother had sold her information to Daniel's people for $300. Not even the price of a good dose of heroin. Get out. Her voice trembled but was ice cold. Get out right now. Olivia, I am sorry. Get out. She screamed, startling Mia into a piercing cry. Marcus backed toward the door, muttering apologies, then disappeared down the dark stairwell. Olivia slammed the door shut, locked it, then leaned against the wall and slid down to the floor. She held her crying daughter, and for the first time in nearly 2 years, she cried with her. Daniel knew where she was. He had photos of her, of Mia. He could come at any time. Her brother had betrayed her. She had no one left. No one in this world was on her side anymore. In desperation, she grabbed her phone and opened Damian Cross's messages. His final line was still there. Do not wait too long. I am not the only one looking for you. He had known, from the very beginning, he had known about Daniel, and somehow, that terrified her and reassured her at the same time. That night Olivia did not sleep. She sat on the cold floor with her back pressed against the door, as if her fragile body alone could stop Daniel if he came. Mia slept in the crib, her steady breathing the only sound keeping Olivia from losing her mind. She checked the lock 17 times. She dragged the wardrobe in front of the window. She held the only fruit knife in the kitchen all night, even though she knew it was nothing compared to the gun Daniel always carried. The next morning, just as Olivia finished feeding Mia, loud pounding exploded against the door. She flinched, her heart leaping into her throat, her hand tightening around the knife. Open the door, Olivia. I know you're in there. The hoarse voice of the landlord made her feel both relieved and afraid. She opened the door slowly, keeping the safety chain on. Mr. Kowalski stood there, his face flushed with anger, a stack of papers clenched in his hand. 2 months, Miss Chen. 2 months without rent. I've been patient long enough. He shoved a paper through the gap in the door. You have 24 hours to get out. Not 7 days. 24 hours. If I come back tomorrow afternoon and you're still here, I'll call the police to throw your things onto the street. Olivia wanted to say something, wanted to beg for more time, but her throat closed up. Mr. Kowalski had already turned away, his heavy footsteps fading down the stairs. She looked down at the paper in her hand. An official eviction notice. 24 hours. Olivia closed the door and leaned against the wall, feeling as if the ground were collapsing beneath her feet. Where could she go? She had no money for a new place. She had no friends to turn to. Marcus had betrayed her. Daniel was hunting her, and in 24 hours, she and her daughter would be on the street, homeless, in the freezing Boston winter. She looked at Mia's crib. Her daughter was sleeping, lips twitching slightly, tiny fingers gripping the old blanket. 18 months old, too young to know anything about this brutal world, too young to know her mother was drowning in despair, Too young to know her biological father was a monster wearing a human face, Olivia had sacrificed everything to protect her child. She had given up her job, her home, her entire life to run. She had gone hungry so Mia could have milk. She had endured humiliation, loneliness, and fear for nearly 2 years, but she could not let her daughter sleep on the street. She could not let Daniel find her. She could not fail at the only thing that still mattered. Olivia reached for her phone and opened Damian Cross's messages. She stared at the screen, her fingers trembling. She was about to step into the den of a mafia boss. She was about to place her fate and her daughter's fate into the hands of a man the media called the Devil of Boston. But between a devil who could protect her and a devil who wanted to destroy her, Olivia knew whom she had to choose. She typed the message one word at a time, as if signing her own sentence. "I accept the job. When can I start?" The reply came only seconds later, as if Damian had been waiting. "Tomorrow, 7 in the morning. Someone will come to pick you and Mia up. Bring only what you need. Everything else will be taken care of." Olivia read the message, then looked at her sleeping daughter. "My love," she whispered. "I don't know if I'm doing the right thing or the wrong thing, but I promise I will protect you, even if I have to walk beside the devil." On the last night in the crumbling apartment, Olivia lay holding Mia and did not close her eyes, waiting for dawn to arrive with the car of the most dangerous man in Boston. Exactly at 7 in the morning, a sleek black Mercedes stopped in front of Olivia's dilapidated apartment. She stood by the window, Mia cradled in her arms, staring down at the car the way one might look at a luxurious coffin waiting below. She had spent the entire night packing the few things she had left, everything fitting into one old suitcase and a small bag for Mia's belongings. 27 years of her life, reduced to 2 bags. Heavy footsteps echoed up the stairwell. Olivia tightened her hold on Mia, her heart pounding, until a knock sounded at the door, followed by a voice low and cold as steel. "Miss Chen." "I am Victor. Mr. Cross sent me." Olivia opened the door and froze. The man in front of her was at least 1.90 meters tall, shoulders as wide as the doorway, a sharply cut face marked by a long scar running from his temple down his left cheekbone. His pale blue eyes held no emotion at all, like a wolf studying its prey. "Viktor Kozlov," he said in a thick Russian accent. "I will take you and the child to the estate. Do you need help with the bags?" Olivia shook her head, not trusting her voice. She followed Victor down the stairs, each step feeling as heavy as stone. When they reached the car, she realized this was no ordinary Mercedes. The windows were unusually thick, likely bulletproof. Another man in a black suit stood by the door, opening it for her with an expressionless, almost robotic face. Victor took the front seat, while Olivia and Mia sat in the back, sinking into the softest leather she had ever touched. The car moved smoothly, gliding as if on air, but Olivia felt no peace. She looked through the window and saw another black SUV following behind, and she was certain there was one more ahead. A 3-car convoy escorting an unemployed nurse and an 18-month-old baby. The absurdity of it all made her want to laugh or cry. They drove out of South Boston, through the city center, then headed north toward the suburbs. Crowded apartment blocks slowly gave way to larger houses, then to mansions, then to estates hidden behind tall trees. 40 minutes later, the car turned onto a private road and stopped before a massive iron gate. Security cameras rotated toward them. Victor spoke briefly into his phone in Russian, and the gate slowly opened. The first thing Olivia noticed was the men in black suits spaced across the lawn, some patrolling with dogs, others standing perfectly still with earpieces and sharp, watchful eyes. She counted at least 12 within her line of sight alone. Then she saw the mansion. It was not a house. It was a castle. Gray granite walls, 3 stories high, dozens of large windows reflecting the morning sun, twin stone staircases leading up to the main entrance flanked by towering columns in an ancient Roman style. In the distance, Olivia glimpsed an outdoor pool, immaculately trimmed gardens, and beyond that, the sea, deep blue water stretching all the way to the horizon. This was a place people like her were never meant to enter. This was the world of kings, of bosses, of men who held power and other people's lives in their hands, and she was stepping into it of her own free will. Victor opened the car door for her. "Welcome to Cross Manor," he said, his voice still devoid of emotion. "Miss Elena is waiting for you inside." Olivia stepped out, clutching Mia as if she were her only lifeline. Her daughter looked up at the towering castle with wide eyes, unaware that mother and child had just entered the devil's den. And that devil was standing somewhere behind those doors, waiting. The massive door opened before Olivia could reach the final step, and a young woman stood there, long black hair falling over her shoulders, skin pale as porcelain, yet her eyes shining with the warmest smile Olivia had seen in months. "I am sure you must be Olivia," the woman said, her voice as gentle as wind chimes. "And this beautiful little girl must be Mia. I am Elena." Elena Cross stepped closer without the hesitation or distance Olivia had braced herself for. Instead, she softly touched Mia's tiny hand, and when Mia broke into a wide grin at the stranger, Elena smiled back as if it were the most natural thing in the world. "She is adorable. You and Mia must have had a long journey. Come inside. I have prepared a room for you both." Olivia crossed the threshold and her breath caught. The interior was even more overwhelming than the outside. The grand hall stretched wide with soaring ceilings, a massive crystal chandelier sparkling like thousands of stars, white marble floors reflecting the light, and a sweeping double staircase curling up to the second floor, as if lifted from a fairy tale. Yet what stunned Olivia most was not the luxury, but the warmth. Fresh flowers arranged in ceramic vases on every table, sunlight pouring through tall windows, soft classical music drifting faintly through the air. This did not feel like the Mafia den she had imagined. It felt like a home. Elena led Olivia upstairs through long hallways lined with paintings and thick plush carpets, moving slowly and pausing often to rest, and Olivia immediately recognized the signs of lupus in the way Elena walked, the fatigue hidden behind her smile, the stiffness and pain in her joints, the pallor of chronic anemia. "This is your room with Mia," Elena said, opening a large wooden door. Olivia stepped inside and went still. The room was 4 times larger than her old apartment. A king-sized bed dressed in pristine white linens, deep blue velvet curtains, a balcony overlooking flower gardens and the distant sea, and in the corner a white baby crib with toys dangling above it, beside shelves filled with formula, diapers, and children's clothes in every size. "My brother told them to prepare everything," Elena said softly. "I did not know exactly what Mia would need, so I asked them to buy everything an 18-month-old might possibly require. If anything is missing, just tell me." Olivia's eyes burned. She swallowed hard, fighting to keep herself together. But the past days had been too long, too exhausting, too full of fear, and now she stood in this dreamlike room with a mini fridge stocked with food, a brand new crib, and a frail but kind woman looking at her without judgment or pity, only pure warmth. "Why?" Olivia whispered, her voice rough, not even sure whether she was asking about the room, the generosity, or everything else. Elena tilted her head, her smile unchanged. "My brother did not explain, and I did not ask. But I know Damien never does anything without a reason, and if he wants to protect you and Mia, then you are in the safest place in the world." Elena left Olivia to rest, and alone in the unfamiliar room, Olivia laid Mia in the new crib and watched her daughter drift quickly into sleep on the soft mattress. Then she sat on the bed, touched the smooth sheets, and looked around the magnificent space. For the first time in nearly 2 years, there was no leaking rain, no smell of mold, no fear of Daniel lurking outside the door. For the first time, Olivia felt safe, and that feeling terrified her more than any danger she had ever faced. Olivia spent the entire afternoon familiarizing herself with the new room and feeding and bathing Mia, and a maid named Maria brought fresh clothes for both of them, saying it was Mr. Cross's order, and Olivia wanted to refuse, but when she looked down at the worn fabric fraying at the shoulders of her old shirt, she swallowed her pride and accepted them. At 6 in the evening, Elena knocked and invited her down to dinner, and Olivia put on the simple dark blue dress that had been delivered, lifted Mia into her arms, and followed Elena down the stairs. The dining room was on the first floor, vast and imposing, with a long black oak table large enough for 20 people, yet only 3 place settings were laid out, one at the head, one opposite, and a high chair for a baby. Elena took her seat and gestured for Olivia to sit across from her, saying her brother would arrive soon and that he wanted to meet her properly. Olivia placed Mia into the high chair, forcing her hands not to shake, because she was about to meet Damien Cross, the Mafia boss, the devil of Boston, the man who had known everything about her before she even knew he existed. Footsteps echoed down the hallway, confident and deliberate, each step like a drumbeat announcing that something was about to change, and then he entered. Olivia forgot how to breathe. The photographs on the internet had not done Damien Cross justice. He was taller than she had imagined, at least 1.85 meters, broad-shouldered, his body carved like stone beneath a charcoal 3-piece suit tailored to every line. His black hair, slightly wavy, was brushed back to reveal a face sharp as a razor, a squared jaw, a straight, uncompromising nose. But it was his eyes that held her captive. Gray, cold as steel, deep as an abyss. The eyes of a man who had seen darkness and become it. The eyes of a predator assessing his prey. He moved toward the table, every step radiating power and danger, without any need for disguise. And the air in the room thickened, growing heavy, and Olivia realized she was holding her breath. Damien stopped at the head of the table, his gray gaze sweeping over her before settling on Mia in the high chair, chewing thoughtfully on her fingers and staring at the stranger with a child's open curiosity, and something flickered in his eyes, too fast for Olivia to name, before he looked back at her. "Miss Chen," he said, his voice deep, not as cold as she had expected, but not warm either, like distant thunder warning of an approaching storm. "I am Damien Cross. Welcome to my home." Olivia stood, unsure if it was the correct courtesy, and nodded, thanking him for everything he had done for her and for Mia. Damien pulled out his chair and sat, his gaze never leaving her, and told her to call him Damien and not to thank him, saying this was a fair transaction. She cared for his sister and he provided housing and protection, and then asked whether she had reviewed the contract. The word contract snapped Olivia back into reality, reminding her this was a job, a transaction, something she could not afford to forget. And she began to answer before Damien interrupted her, his gray eyes flashing with something unreadable as he repeated that she should call him Damien. She met his gaze, and something happened, something she could not name. Not affection, not trust, but an invisible thread tightening between them, a silent recognition between two people who had been betrayed by the world and were still standing. Elena had said her brother saw something in Olivia, and now Olivia thought she saw something in him as well. Dinner passed mostly in silence, Elena trying to keep the conversation light while Olivia remained tense, and Damien clearly had no taste for small talk, eating slowly and occasionally glancing toward Mia with a strange curiosity, as if he had rarely been around children. When the meal ended, Damien stood and looked down at Olivia, telling her that Victor would explain the rules of the estate the next day, that there were places she should not go and questions she should not ask, and asking if she understood, and Olivia nodded with a dry throat. He turned to leave but paused at the doorway, addressing her again, and Olivia corrected him with a boldness she did not know she possessed, saying that if he wanted her to call him Damien, then he should call her Olivia. Silence stretched for a heartbeat, and then one corner of Damien's mouth lifted slightly. Not quite a smile, but the closest thing his face could manage, and he repeated her name slowly, as if tasting each syllable, wishing her good night before disappearing into the shadows of the hall, while Olivia watched him go, her heart racing for a reason she was not ready to admit. 2 weeks passed like a dream Olivia feared she might wake from at any moment, her work not overly demanding, mostly monitoring Elena's health, making sure she took her medication on time, helping her with gentle physical therapy each morning, and staying close during the pain episodes caused by lupus. And Elena was the easiest patient Olivia had ever cared for in her nursing career. Never complaining, never snapping despite the pain, always finding ways to make Olivia smile with stories about her childhood with Damien. Mia became the center of attention in the estate, adored by Elena as if she were her own niece, spending hours playing with her in the flower gardens, and even the usually cold guards softened when Mia toddled past them, wide-eyed with innocent curiosity, while Victor, the frightening man with the scarred face, was caught more than once slipping candy into Mia's hand when he thought no one was watching. Olivia began to gain weight again. The dark circles beneath her eyes faded, and for the first time in nearly 2 years, she slept through the night, no longer jolting awake at every small sound, no longer haunted by nightmares of Daniel standing over her bed with a raised fist, and she even started to feel as if she belonged here. But Cross Manor was not paradise, and Olivia was not blind, and she began to notice strange things slowly, like pieces of a dark puzzle she was not sure she wanted to see whole. Black cars arriving at midnight, men stepping out with tense faces and disappearing through a door Victor had warned her never to approach, voices in Russian, Italian, and languages she did not recognize drifting from Damien's office whenever she passed by, phone calls that made Damien vanish for days, only to return with bloodshot eyes from lack of sleep, and hands sometimes marked with fresh cuts. One night, when Olivia woke because Mia was thirsty, she went down to the kitchen and happened to glance out a window to see a car had just arrived, Victor and 2 other men carrying something heavy wrapped in black cloth toward the garage, something shaped like a human body. And Olivia backed away, her heart pounding, a hand over her mouth to keep from making a sound, returning to her room, without daring to look again, or think about what she had seen, or thought she had seen. The next day, everything was normal, as if nothing had happened. No one mentioned the car from the night before. The lawn was spotless with no trace left behind. Victor was as cold as ever. Damien appeared at dinner in a perfectly pressed suit without a single wrinkle, and Olivia understood that she was living in a world where such things were normal, where someone could be killed at night and breakfast eaten with family in the morning, where kindness and brutality existed side by side under the same roof. She should have been afraid. She should have grabbed Mia and run. But run where? Back to Daniel waiting for her. Out onto the streets with 93 cents in her pocket, and Olivia looked at Mia sleeping in the beautiful crib, looked at the warm and safe room, then closed her eyes. She had already made her choice. And no matter how dark this world might be, she would learn how to live in it, for her daughter, because this was the only place Daniel could not touch. That night, Elena was struck by a violent flare of joint pain at 2 a.m, and Olivia was sitting beside her bed, gently massaging Elena's swollen hands, when the sound of engines rose from the front of the estate, not one vehicle but many, and Olivia looked out the window and counted 5 black SUVs lined up at the gate, dozens of men stepping out, some in suits, some in tight black tactical clothing, moving fast and with precision, like a unit that had trained together countless times. And Elena whispered weakly but firmly for her not to look, telling Olivia not to look and not to ask, yet Olivia turned back with her heart pounding and asked what was happening, and Elena closed her eyes, her face pale from pain and worry, saying her brother had his own business Olivia should not know about, and that it would be best for her to stay there until morning, but Olivia could not, the mix of fear and curiosity inside her too strong to resist. So she told Elena she needed the bathroom and slipped into the hallway. The upper floor eerily silent while muffled sounds drifted up from below, hurried voices, heavy footsteps, and something that sounded like the groan of an injured man. And Olivia crept down the stairs, hiding behind a large pillar and looking into the main hall, nearly screaming at what she saw. Victor and 2 other men carrying a third man, blood streaking across the white marble floor. The injured man young, perhaps in his early 20s, face ashen, one hand clamped over his shoulder where blood seeped through his fingers, and Damien's voice rang out from somewhere beyond Olivia's sight, ordering them to take him to the medical room, to call Dr. Vance immediately, and to find the bastard who had done this. And then Damien stepped into view, and Olivia had to clamp a hand over her mouth to keep from making a sound. He was no longer in a suit, but in a white shirt, with the sleeves rolled to his elbows, smeared with blood at the wrists and chest. His face carved from ice, gray eyes darkened by restrained fury, and for the first time Olivia saw the devil people whispered about, not a wealthy businessman but a mafia boss, a man who could order death without blinking. And Victor reported in a cold Russian tone that it was Benedetti, that they had ambushed a shipment at the port, that 2 men were lost, and Nikolai was shot but would live. And Damien was silent for a long moment before nodding and ordering a meeting with all captains at 5 a.m, saying it was time Benedetti learned the consequences of touching his people. And Olivia backed away with her heart racing and accidentally struck a vase on a shelf, watching it wobble as she lunged to catch it but failed, the crash shattering the silence as it hit the floor, every head turning toward the staircase. Olivia frozen like a rabbit in headlights as her eyes met Damien's gray gaze, a moment stretching endlessly with no one speaking, until Damien gave a small nod to Victor, and the Russian man began climbing the stairs toward her, Damien instructing him to take her back to her room and make sure she and the baby were safe. His voice, not angry as she had expected, but tired and edged with something she could not read, and Victor reached her side, his scarred face as unreadable as ever, telling her to follow him, and Olivia did, her legs shaking so badly she nearly stumbled, not daring to look back, though she could feel Damien's gaze burning into her spine. And once they reached her room, Victor stopped at the door and told her calmly that she had seen what she should not have seen, that Mr. Cross had decided to let her stay, and that she should not make him regret that decision. And the door closed, leaving Olivia sitting on the bed staring at Mia, sleeping peacefully in her crib, unaware of the blood-soaked world her mother had brought her into. And Olivia understood now, from the articles, the signs, the instincts she had tried to ignore, but knowing and witnessing were not the same, and there was no room left for self-deception. She was living in a mafia den, protected by a crime lord, and the most terrifying thing was not the blood or the violence but the realization that she did not want to leave, because even if Damien Cross was a devil, He was at least a devil who stood on her side. 3 days after that night, Olivia tried to live as if everything were normal. She did not mention what she had seen, and Damien did not either. They met at dinner as usual, exchanged polite formalities, as if she had never seen blood on the marble floor or heard him order retaliation. Yet something between them had changed, an unspoken understanding, a wall that had quietly fallen. On the 4th night, Mia woke at 1 a.m. with a weak, fragile cry, and Olivia sat up instantly, her heart sinking the moment she touched her daughter's forehead. Hot, hotter than before. She grabbed the thermometer, and the number that appeared sent panic flooding through her. 39.5 degrees and rising. Olivia lifted Mia into her arms, trying to soothe her, but the baby would not stop crying, her small body trembling. Ordinary fever medicine would not be enough. She needed to take Mia to the hospital immediately. Olivia was just about to call Victor when the bedroom door opened, and Damien stood there, still fully dressed in his suit, as if he had not slept at all, his face taut with tension, saying he heard the crying and asking what was wrong. And Olivia answered with a shaking voice that Mia had a high fever and she needed to take her to the hospital. Damien said nothing more. He turned and spoke over his shoulder, telling her to follow him, right now. They did not wait for Victor. Damien drove the Mercedes himself, speeding through the empty night streets at a pace that made Olivia grip the door handle tightly. Yet, she was not afraid. Strangely enough, sitting in a car driven by a Mafia boss in the dead of night, she felt safer than she ever had. At the hospital, everything happened so fast it left Olivia dazed. One phone call from Damien and Mia was taken into an examination room immediately. No waiting, no paperwork. The best pediatrician was called in despite the hour. And after an hour of tests, the diagnosis came. A respiratory infection. Not too serious, but requiring overnight observation. Mia was given fluids and medication, and her fever began to drop. Olivia sat by her daughter's bed, drained by worry and exhaustion, while Damien stood quietly in the corner watching, telling her she should rest and that the baby would be fine. But Olivia shook her head, saying she could not sleep, and Damien was silent for a moment, before pulling up a chair and sitting beside her, an action so ordinary and human that Olivia had to look at him again, to be sure this was still Damien Cross, the man she had seen ordering revenge only nights before. The first time I stayed awake all night for someone else was when Elena was diagnosed with lupus, Damien said, his voice low and distant. She was 19. I was 27. Our parents had been gone for a long time. I was all she had. And he paused, gray eyes staring into nothing, saying he had built this entire empire to make sure she had the best doctors, the most expensive medicine, everything money could buy. But there were things money could not buy. Olivia looked at him, and for the first time saw unguarded weariness on the face that was always cold. Like health, she said softly, and Damien nodded. Like health, like time, like the people we have lost. Silence stretched between them. But it was not heavy. It was the silence of two people who understood the pain of being unable to protect the ones they loved. Who did you lose? Damien asked without looking at her. And Olivia was surprised by the directness, answering that she lost her mother to cancer when she was 19, and he looked at her again and asked about her father, and she said he left when she was 5 and she did not remember his face, and Damien nodded as if that answer made perfect sense. Then he did something Olivia did not expect. He reached out and took her hand, gently but firmly, telling her that the baby would be fine, and for the first time his gray eyes carried something that resembled warmth, saying he promised. Olivia did not pull her hand away. She looked at his large hand wrapped around hers, felt the heat and strength in it, and in that moment, in a hospital room at 3 a.m, beside her sleeping daughter, she realized that something else inside her had shifted. Another wall had fallen, and she was no longer sure she could ever build it again. Mia slept peacefully after the fever broke, her steady breathing the gentlest sound in the quiet hospital room, and Olivia remained seated beside the bed while Damien was still there, his hand no longer holding hers, yet the distance between them had narrowed in a way that was hard to define. And then he spoke abruptly, his voice low like distant thunder, saying that she had asked about her parents, and Olivia turned to him, surprised by his willingness to open himself, telling him softly that he did not have to speak if he did not want to. But Damien looked out the window where the night sky was slowly fading into the gray of dawn, and said that she was living in his house, caring for his sister, raising her daughter under his roof, and that she deserved to know who he was. And he fell silent for a moment, as if searching for the right place to begin, before speaking evenly, as though telling someone else's story, saying that his mother's name was Isabella, that she was beautiful like an angel and kind to the point of naivety, that she met his father, Richard Cross, when she was only 18, a man born into a wealthy Boston family, charming and polished, who hid his true nature until she was already pregnant with him, and Olivia listened without daring to breathe too loudly, feeling the old pain awakening in every word Damien spoke, as he said his father was an alcoholic and violent, that he beat his mother before Damien could even walk, that she hid the bruises under makeup and lied that she had fallen down the stairs, fallen in the kitchen, fallen anywhere except into the truth, that she stayed for him and for Elena because she believed his father would change. And Damien drew in a deep breath while Olivia saw his hand clench on his thigh, and he said that night he was 12 and Elena was 4, that his father came home drunk and looked for a reason to fight with their mother, that he did not remember what his father screamed about. Maybe dinner was cold, maybe the house was not clean enough, maybe there was no reason at all. But he remembered his mother begging, remembered her pushing him and Elena into the closet and telling them to hide and not come out no matter what happened. And Damien's voice dropped, almost to a whisper, as he said he heard everything through the crack in the closet door. The punches, his mother's cries, and then the gunshot. One single shot, followed by silence, and Olivia felt tears burn in her eyes, but said nothing, only listened. And Damien continued that when the police arrived his father had taken his own life, that his mother lay on the kitchen floor with blood everywhere, that Elena did not speak for 2 years afterward, and that he swore he would never again allow anyone he loved to be hurt that way. And he turned to Olivia, his gray eyes darkened by the weight of memory, and said he had built all of this. The empire, the power, so he would never again be as helpless as that 12-year-old boy hiding in a closet listening to his mother die, that he became something people feared, so that those he cared about would never have to fear anything again. And Olivia understood then why he had helped her on the night of the mistaken message, why he reacted instantly to the story of a desperate mother and a sick child, why beneath the cold exterior and ruthless reputation there was still a man capable of caring, and she told him gently that he was not a monster but a wounded child who had learned how to protect himself. And Damien looked at her as something seemed to crack in his gray eyes, and he said that he had killed people, many people, with his own hands or by his orders, asking if she could accept that, and Olivia did not answer right away, looking instead at her sleeping daughter, thinking of Daniel, thinking of what he had done to her, thinking of how she had once wished someone would kill him for her, and finally she answered honestly that she did not know, but she knew he had saved her daughter's life twice, and that mattered more to her than anything he had done to others. And Damien studied her for a long time, as if searching for deceit in her words, but finding none, and for the first time Olivia saw something like peace settle over the face that was always so tightly drawn. Silence lingered between them after Damien finished telling his story, and Olivia felt that something inside her demanded a response, an exchange, a sharing of her own darkness to balance what he had just laid bare. So she drew in a deep breath and began to speak, her voice light as a passing breeze, saying that she met Daniel right after graduating from nursing school, that he was a police officer, handsome, charming, and skilled at making a 23-year-old woman who had lost her mother feel as if she were the center of the universe, that they dated for 6 months and then married, and she truly believed she had found the man who would protect her for the rest of her life. And Olivia gave a bitter smile, her eyes fixed on nothing, as she said the first beating came 2 months after the wedding, when she came home late from a long shift, that he accused her of cheating, that she denied it, and that he punched her in the face, then cried, apologized, and promised it would never happen again. And she believed him, while Damien said nothing, but Olivia could feel the tension coiled in his body like an animal restraining its rage, and she continued that it happened again and again, each time with a new excuse, each time followed by apologies and promises, that she hid the bruises under makeup, lied to her coworkers that she was clumsy, lied to herself that things would get better, until she discovered she was pregnant, and at the same time discovered that Daniel was not just an ordinary police officer, that he took bribes from gangs, protected drug traffickers, and even helped destroy evidence in murder cases. And Olivia looked down at her hands, her fingers laced together and trembling, as she said she wanted to leave, but Daniel told her that if she did he would kill her, that no one would believe a nurse over a decorated police officer, that he would find her no matter where she ran. And she believed him because she had seen what he was capable of. And she paused, swallowing hard, before saying that on the night she escaped she was 6 months pregnant, that Daniel came home drunk and kicked her in the stomach, that she thought she would lose her baby, thought she would die, but somehow when he passed out she crawled out of the house with one bag and $200, that rain was pouring down, that she walked 5 miles to the bus station, with blood running down her legs, praying her child was still alive, and tears streamed down Olivia's face, though she did not bother to wipe them away as she said she had been running for nearly 2 years, changing addresses 4 times, living in fear every single day, and that he still found her. He always found her. And Damien remained silent, but when Olivia looked at him, she saw his gray eyes had darkened to something frightening, his jaw clenched so tightly she could see the muscle twitch beneath his skin, and he said with a voice low and unshakable like an oath that Daniel would never touch her again, nor Mia, that he promised. And Olivia looked at him, the man who had confessed to killing, the man feared by the entire underworld, and she believed him, completely and absolutely, and they did not touch, did not hold hands, did not embrace. There was no physical contact at all, yet in that hospital room at dawn, with her daughter sleeping peacefully, and their secrets laid bare, something had irrevocably changed between them. An invisible bond had been tied. And Olivia knew that whatever came next, she would no longer be alone. 1 week after the night at the hospital, Olivia's life seemed to have found a new rhythm. Mia had fully recovered, and was now toddling unsteadily across the garden, under the quiet watch of Elena, and even Victor, and Olivia and Damien did not speak about the night they had shared their secrets. Yet something had changed in the way they looked at each other. Glances that lingered a little longer, fingers brushing by accident when passing a cup of tea, silences that were no longer heavy but comfortable, like those between 2 people who understood one another without words. That afternoon, Olivia was playing with Mia in the living room when the gate bell rang again and again, urgent and aggressive. She heard Victor speaking sharply into his radio, then the sound of heavy footsteps running through the hall. An instinct told her something was wrong. Olivia lifted Mia into her arms, the protective reflex rising instantly, walked to the window and looked down at the gate, and the blood in her veins turned to ice. Daniel, he was standing there right in front of the iron gate, wearing his police uniform as if he were on official duty. Beside him 2 men in suits, who looked like lawyers, and in his hand a stack of documents he waved toward the security camera. Olivia's heart slammed wildly. She clutched Mia and stepped back from the window. But it was too late. He had seen her, and he smiled, the same smile she had seen hundreds of times before the fists came down. The living room door opened, and Damien stepped in, his face carved from stone, gray eyes darkened by something dangerous. "Stay here with Elena," he said curtly. "Do not leave this room. Victor will be with you." "Damien," Olivia started, but he had already turned and walked away. She looked back through the window and saw Damien step out to the gate alone, without guards, facing Daniel across the iron bars, and even from this distance, Olivia could feel the explosive tension between the 2 men. She could not hear their words, but she saw Daniel hand the documents to Damien, saw Damien skim them and throw them back, saw Daniel smile and say something that made Damien's shoulders go rigid. 10 minutes later, Daniel and his companions got into their car and drove away, and Damien stood motionless at the gate for a long moment before turning back inside. When he returned to the living room, his face was a flawless mask of cold control, but Olivia had learned how to read what lay beneath. "What does he want?" she asked, her voice trembling despite her effort to steady it. Damien looked at Mia, curled in her arms, then at Olivia. "He has a court order demanding custody, claiming you abducted his daughter and are living with a dangerous criminal." Olivia felt as if she had been punched in the chest. No, he cannot." "He can," Damien replied, his voice even but his eyes burning. "He is a police officer with connections, and he has clearly bought a judge. The order requires you to surrender Mia within 7 days, or be arrested for child abduction." Olivia collapsed onto the chair, clutching Mia as if someone were already trying to tear her away. "I will not give my child to him," she said, her voice breaking. "I would rather die." "You will not have to," Damien said, stepping closer. "But you need to know one more thing." "What else?" "Daniel is not acting alone. He is working with Anthony Benedetti." The name dragged Olivia back to the night she had witnessed the meeting, the wounded man, the cold fury in Damien's voice when he spoke of his enemy. "The man who ambushed your people at the port?" she asked. Damien nodded. "Benedetti has been searching for my weakness for years. Now he thinks he has found it. He thinks you and Mia are that weakness." Olivia looked at him, understanding the terrifying truth. This was not just Daniel trying to reclaim his daughter. This was a war between 2 criminal powers, and she and Mia had become pieces on the board. "I am sorry," she whispered. "I dragged you into this." Damien looked at her, and for the first time he reached out of his own accord and lightly touched her cheek. "No one dragged me anywhere. I chose to stand here, and I will not let anyone touch what is mine." "What is mine?" The words echoed in Olivia's mind with a meaning she did not dare examine, but before she could react, Damien withdrew his hand and turned toward the door. "Call an emergency meeting with the captains," he said to Victor waiting in the hall. "If Benedetti wants war, then he will have war." The door closed, leaving Olivia alone with her daughter, and the growing fear that the storm about to break would sweep everything away. 2 days later, Daniel came back, this time without lawyers. Just him and a police cruiser parked outside the gate like an open declaration of war. And Olivia was feeding Mia lunch when Victor entered with a tighter expression than usual, and said that Daniel wanted to speak directly to Mr. Cross, alone, not through the fence, and that Mr. Cross had agreed, and Olivia jumped to her feet, nearly spilling Mia's bowl, saying no. Damien could not go out alone with him because Daniel was dangerous, but Victor replied in his emotionless tone that Mr. Cross knew what he was doing and had ordered Olivia to stay in her room and not come out under any circumstances. Yet Olivia could not sit still, and when Victor left, she carried Mia to Elena, who was resting, then slipped to a second-floor hallway window overlooking the front grounds, where she saw Damien step out of the main doors alone, without guards, without any visible weapon, walking toward the gate where Daniel waited, each step radiating quiet confidence and authority. The gate opening as the two men faced each other, Daniel a few inches taller, broad-shouldered and muscular from regular training, dressed in his police uniform with a gun at his hip, as a reminder that the law stood on his side. But Damien did not flinch, standing with his hands in his pockets, head slightly tilted, looking at Daniel the way one looks at an annoying insect interrupting the day, and Olivia could not hear their words, but she saw Daniel smile, that familiar, condescending smile, gesture toward the mansion as he spoke, clearly referring to her or Mia, while Damien remained utterly still, and Daniel stepped closer, invading Damien's space, trying to intimidate him with his larger frame, speaking close to Damien's face and pointing a finger at his chest, and then everything happened too fast. Damien moved like a ghost, one hand snapping around the pointing finger and twisting it at an unnatural angle, Daniel collapsing to his knees in pain, his mouth open in a scream Olivia could not hear, while Damien's other hand had already drawn Daniel's gun and pressed it beneath his chin, all of it unfolding in less than 3 seconds. And Olivia clapped a hand over her mouth to keep from screaming as she saw Damien lean down and say something into Daniel's ear, not shouting, not angry, just calm words that turned Daniel's face from pain to pure terror. Then Damien spoke again and released him, shoving Daniel down onto the ground, removing the magazine from the gun and tossing the empty weapon beside him before turning and walking away as if he had just dealt with a minor inconvenience. And Daniel sat there for a moment, his face flushed with humiliation, before pushing himself up, picking up the gun and staring after Damien as he walked back into the house, shouting loudly enough for Olivia to hear that Cross would regret this, that he would come back and next time bring a full tactical unit, sneering that Damien had no idea who he was dealing with, and that Benedetti would tear him and his whore apart piece by piece. And Damien stopped at the doorway and turned, fixing Daniel with a look so cold and lethal that even from the second-floor window Olivia felt it, saying 7 days in a voice that carried through the quiet air, that if Daniel was still breathing after 7 days, Damien would come find him himself. Then he went inside and the door closed behind him, leaving Daniel standing there a moment longer with rage and fear twisting his face before he climbed into the car and drove off, tires screeching over gravel. And Olivia stepped back from the window, her whole body trembling, unsure whether to feel fear at the violence she had witnessed, relief at Daniel's humiliation, or dread, because his threat was not empty. 7 days. She had 7 days before everything exploded. That night, after Mia had fallen into a deep sleep, Olivia received a message from Damien asking her to come to his office, and she walked down the long, dark hallway, with her heart pounding at every step, not knowing what awaited her, the heavy oak door of the office already standing open, Damien by the large window overlooking the dark sea, a half-finished glass of whiskey in his hand, his suit replaced by a black shirt with the sleeves rolled up, and in the dim light he looked more exhausted, more human. "Close the door," he said without turning around. And Olivia obeyed, stopping near the threshold, unsure whether to step closer or keep her distance. Damien turned, gray eyes locking onto her in the shadows. I have a proposal. And Olivia waited, her throat tight. Marry me. The words fell like a bomb into the silence. Olivia blinked, certain she had misheard. What did you say? Marry me? Damien repeated calmly, as if discussing a business contract. A legal marriage will give you protections Daniel cannot break. You will be my wife. Mia will be the child of my wife. My lawyers can use that to overturn his court order. No court in Boston will challenge the Cross family. No judge will sign an order to take the daughter of Damien Cross's wife. Olivia stared at him, her heart racing for reasons she refused to name. A marriage of convenience. On paper, yes. Damien set the glass down and moved toward her. You will have every legal right of a lawful wife, insurance, assets, inheritance, but no other obligations. You will keep your own room, your own life. This is only an arrangement to protect you and Mia. Olivia stepped back as he drew closer. Why? She asked, her voice trembling. Why are you doing all this? You could have sent me away from the beginning. You could have left me to Daniel. Why protect me as if I mattered? Damien stopped one step away, gray eyes never leaving her face. Perhaps because you do matter. Silence stretched between them, heavy with meaning, and Olivia felt as if the room were shrinking, leaving only the two of them and a distance that was dissolving inch by inch. I cannot, she finally said, her voice weaker than she wanted. I cannot marry for an arrangement, even for protection. I married the wrong man once and almost lost my life. I cannot step into another marriage without love. Damien studied her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then he nodded. I understand. And he turned back toward the window as if the conversation were over. But whether you agree or not, I will still protect you. Not because of a deal or a contract, but because I choose to. Olivia looked at his back, feeling something fracture and mend at the same time in her chest. Damien, she said softly, and though he did not turn, she knew he was listening. Thank you. For everything. Damien did not answer, but she saw his shoulders lower slightly, as if a weight had been lifted, and Olivia left the office, closing the door behind her, walking back to her room with a heart beating to a rhythm she had never felt before. 6 days passed in a state of steadily mounting tension. Damien reinforced security around the estate. Patrols doubled, new cameras installed in every blind spot, and Victor rarely left Olivia and Mia's side, a silent shadow always close. But on the 7th day everything collapsed. That afternoon Elena suggested taking Mia to play in the Eastern Flower Garden, an area considered the safest, set deep within the estate, surrounded by high walls and guarded by 2 security men. And Olivia agreed because she needed to prepare the evening medication for Elena, and Mia had been cooped up inside for too long. She glanced out the window and saw Elena sitting on a stone bench while Mia ran in circles chasing butterflies, her clear laughter ringing through the afternoon air. Everything looked impossibly peaceful, and then the explosion came. Not one, but several, rapid and violent, like fireworks turned deadly. Olivia looked back toward the window and saw smoke rising from the direction of the main gate. Screams, running footsteps, the crack of gunfire, and in the eastern garden she saw dark figures climbing over the wall. Olivia's heart skipped a beat before she bolted from the room like a maddened animal, racing down the stairs, through the corridors, flinging open the doors to the garden, and the scene before her was a nightmare. 2 guards lay motionless on the grass, blood spreading beneath them. Elena was being shielded and dragged back toward the house by a man, her face white with terror, and Mia, her daughter, was being carried by a man dressed in black toward the wall where a rope ladder swayed. Mia, Olivia screamed, her legs carrying her faster than she had ever thought possible. Mia was screaming too, tiny hands flailing, calling for her mother in pure panic. The kidnapper turned and Olivia recognized the face, not Daniel but one of the men who had come with the lawyers that day, one of Benedetti's men. Olivia did not slow. She hurled herself at the man holding her child, fingernails clawing at his face, teeth sinking into whatever flesh she could reach. Mia slipped from his arms and fell onto the grass. Olivia screamed for her to run, but Mia was too small, too terrified, frozen in place and sobbing. A fist smashed into Olivia's face. She went down with blood flooding her mouth. She tried to rise, but a kick to her stomach doubled her over. Through the haze of pain, she saw another man scoop Mia up and heard her daughter's cries growing distant. No, Olivia tried to scream, but her voice came out as a broken whisper. My baby. Give me my baby back. A blow struck the back of her head. and darkness swallowed her whole. When Olivia woke, she was lying in her own bed, her head splitting with pain, her lips swollen, her body feeling as though it had been run over, yet none of that physical agony compared to the terror. When memory came crashing back, Mia. She sat up, ignoring the dizziness, ignoring the nurse, trying to restrain her, stumbling to the door and down the stairs toward the shouts and crashing sounds coming from Damien's office. She shoved the door open and froze. The office looked as if a storm had torn through it. The desk overturned, chairs shattered, books and papers strewn across the floor, and in the wreckage, Damien stood with his back to her, his hand bleeding where he had punched the wall, his entire body shaking with barely contained rage. Victor stood rigid in the corner. Elena was crying on the sofa, while Maria tried to comfort her. "Damien," Olivia said, her voice breaking. He turned and she saw a Damien cross she had never seen before. Gray eyes now black as a moonless night. All restraint gone. Only the raw fury of a cornered beast left. And when he saw her, that fury wavered, pierced by something else. Pain, guilt, and a fear she had never imagined on that face. "My daughter," Olivia whispered as her legs finally gave out, and Damien lunged forward, catching her before she hit the floor. "I will find her," he said, his voice hoarse and shaking. "I swear to you, Olivia, I will bring Mia back, even if I have to burn this entire city to the ground." Olivia looked up at him through her tears, and knew this was no empty promise. Damien Cross would truly set everything ablaze to return her child. The only question left was whether they would be in time. Within an hour of the kidnapping, the Cross estate turned into a war command center. Men Olivia had never seen before appearing from everywhere and filling the large underground conference room she had never been allowed to enter until now. Computer screens glowing, city maps spread across the table, radios and phones crackling nonstop, and Damien stood at the head of it all, still wearing the shirt stained with blood from his injured hand, not seeming to notice, gray eyes now icy, and voice low and unyielding as he issued orders, telling them he wanted every road out of Boston monitored, every warehouse, every safe house, every location Benedetti had ever used, searched, to mobilize everything, that he did not care how much money it cost, or how many people they stepped on, to find the child. Victor nodding and immediately assigning tasks to the captains, while Olivia sat in a corner, her body numb with shock and pain, yet refusing to leave, because she needed to be here, needed to know everything, needed to do something, rather than sit alone while fear devoured her second by second. And then Damien's phone rang, his jaw tightening as he checked the screen before answering on speaker so everyone could hear. Daniel's voice coming through, thick with triumph, calling Damien by name and saying the baby was with him, crying nonstop and calling for her mother. How pitiful it was. Olivia surging forward but Victor stopping her, the sound of Mia's weak, terrified cries in the background crushing her heart. Damien asking calmly what he wanted. Daniel laughing and saying he wanted many things, but his boss Benedetti wanted something specific. All of Damien's operational files, partner lists, transport routes, bank accounts, everything, to be handed over within 24 hours, and the child would be returned intact. Refusal meaning she would be sent back piece by piece. Olivia collapsing with only Victor keeping her upright as she tried to scream and beg but no sound came out. Damien asking what guarantee he had they would keep their word if he complied. Daniel laughing louder and saying he did not. Asking what choice Damien had, reminding him Benedetti had waited years for this chance, that it was surrender or the child's death. 24 hours. The call ending and a dead silence falling over the room. Olivia looking at Damien for answers, asking through trembling tears what he would do and whether he would give them the files. Damien meeting her gaze, and in that moment revealing the war raging inside him as he said that handing over the files would let Benedetti destroy him, that he would be arrested or killed. Elena would lose her only protector, and there was no guarantee Mia would be released, because men like Benedetti did not keep promises. Olivia screaming through her tears, asking if that meant he would let her daughter die. Damien stepping close and gripping her shoulders, gray eyes burning with a resolve she had never seen before as he said no, that he would not surrender, and he would not let Mia die, that he would find where they were and bring her back. Olivia asking how, and Damien answering by the method he knew best, turning to Victor and ordering him to activate every informant, to locate Benedetti within 12 hours and prepare the most elite strike team, declaring that tonight they would hunt. Victor responding instantly with something like ruthless anticipation in his eyes, and Olivia looking around at the men arming themselves, at Damien becoming the most dangerous version of himself, realizing that in the next 24 hours blood would be spilled, the only question being whose. 14 hours after the ransom call, Damien's sources pinpointed the location, an abandoned warehouse in the southern industrial district of Boston, once a Benedetti distribution hub before being seized by the Cross Syndicate 5 years earlier. He is using his own former territory, Victor reported during the emergency meeting at midnight. There are about 20 guards, fully armed. The child is being held on the second floor in an old office. Damien nodded, his fingers tapping a steady rhythm on the map. We strike at 3 a.m, when the guards are at their weakest. Victor, split the teams into 3 groups and surround from 3 sides. I will lead the main unit through the front entrance. Olivia rose from the corner where she had sat silently watching for hours. I am coming with you. Every eye in the room turned to her. Damien looked back, his brow tightening. No, not a question, Olivia said, her voice firmer than she had ever believed possible. I am going. That is my daughter in there. This is a battlefield, not a place for civilians. Damien replied coldly. You will slow us down and put everyone at risk, including Mia. Olivia stepped closer, unflinching under his intimidating stare. I lived with a man who beat me every day for 2 years. I ran while 6 months pregnant through a storm. I raised my child alone in poverty and fear for 18 months. I am not as weak as you think, Damien, and I will not sit here waiting while my daughter needs me. They faced each other, will against will, and in the end, Damien yielded, not because she was stronger, but because he understood. You wear body armor and stay directly behind me at all times, he said, his voice still hard but conceding. If I tell you to run, you run. If I tell you to take cover, you take cover. No arguments. Understood? Understood? At 3 a.m, the black convoy rolled silently into the industrial zone. Olivia sat in the SUV with Damien and Victor, the heavy vest weighing on her chest, her heart pounding like a war drum. Through the window she saw the warehouse emerge from the darkness, faint lights glowing from a few second-floor windows. Mia was in there, her daughter, alone and terrified, waiting for her. The vehicle stopped. Damien turned to her, gray eyes sharp as blades in the dark. Ready? Olivia nodded, not trusting her voice. Damien opened the door, and hell began. Gunfire thundered as the cross teams attacked from 3 sides. Olivia ran behind Damien, crouched low, her heart racing madly as bullets tore through the air. Men fell on both sides, blood spreading across the concrete, the smell of gunpowder and iron choking the air. Damien moved ahead like a lethal phantom, firing without hesitation, wasting not a single round, each shot dropping an enemy. His face utterly blank, no anger, no fear, only the cold focus of a professional killer. This was the devil, people whispered about. This was the devil of Boston. They pushed inside the warehouse through dark corridors and empty rooms. Victor and his team had secured the first floor and the gunfire thinned. Damien led Olivia up the stairs past bodies still warm. She forced herself not to look, not to think about families and lives. They had taken her child and they deserved this fate. The second floor held a long hallway lined with doors. Damien signaled her to stay back, and kicked each door open, weapon raised, the first room empty, the second empty, the third, and Olivia heard crying, the cry she would recognize among a million sounds. Mia! She screamed, shoving past Damien and rushing into the room despite every warning. Mia sat in the corner, her hands tied to a table leg, her face streaked with tears and grime. A woman stood beside her with a gun aimed at the door. But when Olivia charged in, the woman hesitated for a single second, and that second was enough. Damien fired once, the woman fell, and the gun clattered away. Olivia did not look. She fell to her knees beside Mia, trembling hands tearing at the bindings, pulling her daughter into her arms as if someone might steal her away again. I am here, she whispered through tears. I am here. You are safe now, Mia sobbed, tiny arms locked around her mother's neck, as if never wanting to let go. Olivia looked up to see Damien standing in the doorway, gun still in hand, his face still carved from stone. Yet in his gray eyes she saw something else, not relief, but iron resolve. It is not over, he said. Daniel and Benedetti are still somewhere. Victor's voice crackled over the radio. Benedetti found in the basement. He is trying to escape. Damien looked at Olivia. Stay here. Victor will protect you and Mia. He turned and walked away. And Olivia knew that when he returned there would be more blood on his hands, and she realized she did not care at all. Olivia held Mia tightly against her chest, her back pressed into the corner of the wall, instinctively shielding her daughter with her own body, while gunfire still echoed somewhere in the distance. Mia had stopped crying, leaving only small broken hiccups, her wide eyes squeezed shut, her face buried against her mother's chest as if trying to disappear from this terrifying world. "I am sorry," Olivia whispered into her daughter's ear as tears streamed down her face. "I am sorry I did not protect you. I am so sorry." Heavy footsteps sounded in the hallway, and Olivia tightened her hold, her eyes fixed on the doorway, waiting for Victor to appear as Damien had promised. But it was not Victor who stepped inside. It was Daniel, looking as though he had crawled straight out of hell. His suit disheveled, blood smeared across his face and hands, his left eye swollen shut, yet the gun in his hand was steady, aimed directly at Olivia, his smile twisted and unhinged. "Did you really think you could hide from me forever, Olivia?" he snarled as he advanced. "Did you think that Mafia bastard could protect you? Look at this place. I am still standing, and he is busy killing people downstairs." Olivia backed away, placing herself fully in front of Mia, her body shaking but her voice forcing itself to stay steady as she begged him to stop, telling him the child had nothing to do with this, that he could take whatever he wanted but to leave Mia alone. Daniel laughed, a wild sound that bounced off the bare walls. "Nothing to do with this. She is my daughter, my blood, and you stole her from me for almost 2 years. Do you know what I endured? Being mocked because my wife ran, being questioned because I could not control my own family." He stepped closer, the gun never wavering. "Now you will pay. I will shoot you in front of my daughter. Then I will raise her my way. She will learn that no one betrays Daniel Morrison and survives." Olivia felt the blood freeze in her veins as she looked into the eyes she had once loved and trusted, and now saw only pure madness. He truly meant to kill her, and then raise Mia into a child of fear and ruin just as he had broken her. "No," she said, her voice strangely calm. "I would rather die than let you touch my daughter." Daniel laughed loudly, his finger tightening on the trigger. Then, "You will get your wish." The gunshot rang out. Olivia closed her eyes, clutching Mia and bracing for pain that never came. Instead, there was the sound of a heavy body hitting the floor. She opened her eyes to see Daniel sprawled at her feet, blood spreading from a bullet hole in the center of his forehead, his eyes staring up at the ceiling in eternal shock. Damien stood in the doorway, his gun still raised, thin smoke drifting from the barrel, his face utterly empty, as if he had just crushed an insect rather than ended a human life. He stepped over Daniel's body as if it were an obstacle on the floor, and came straight to Olivia. "Are you hurt?" he asked, his voice calm as ever while his gray eyes scanned her for injuries. Olivia shook her head, barely trusting herself to speak. She looked down at Daniel, the man who had tormented her for years, who had turned her life into hell, and she felt nothing, no joy, no sorrow, no regret, only a strange emptiness, as if the final dark chapter had finally closed. Damien's radio crackled and Victor's voice came through saying Benedetti had been cornered in the basement and was demanding negotiations. Damien looked at Olivia, then at Mia, pressed against her chest. "Victor will get you and Mia to the car safely," he said. "I need to finish this. Damien," Olivia called as he turned away. He paused at the doorway. "Thank you. For everything." Damien did not answer, only gave a brief nod before disappearing into the dark corridor. 15 minutes later, as Olivia sat in the vehicle with Mia asleep from sheer exhaustion, she heard a final gunshot echo from the warehouse. A single shot, then silence. Victor took a short call, nodded, and turned to her. "It is done," he said simply. "Benedetti is no longer a problem. As for Daniel, the official police report will state he died a hero in a shootout with the cartel. No questions will be asked." Olivia looked out the window and saw Damien emerge from the warehouse, his shirt smeared with blood, his hand still holding the gun. He looked exhausted, suddenly years older than when they arrived, but when his gaze met hers through the glass, something flickered in his gray eyes. Not victory, not pride, but relief. Relief that at last the nightmare was over. Olivia held her sleeping daughter close, and for the first time in many years, she felt as though she could finally breathe. 6 months after that harrowing night, the Cross estate was filled with fresh flowers and the soft glow of candlelight, and Olivia stood before the mirror in a pristine white wedding gown, staring at the reflection of a woman she barely recognized, her eyes no longer shadowed by sleepless nights, her face full and radiant again, and most importantly, The fear that once hid in her gaze was gone. Elena stepped in, beautiful in a pale blue bridesmaid dress, her health greatly improved after months of Olivia's devoted care. Calling her future sister and teasing that Damien looked as if he might faint from nerves, Olivia smiled, a real smile she had forgotten how to feel for years, and walked down the familiar hallway until the garden doors opened, and she saw him. Damien standing beneath an arch of white roses in a classic black suit, dark hair neatly combed, gray eyes fixed on her with something she had learned to recognize over the past 6 months. Love. Not the loud and reckless love of fairy tales, but a quiet and steadfast love built from sleepless nights beside Mia's bed after nightmares, from silent breakfasts where they learned to exist together without words, from moments when he held her hand as she cried over old memories, without judgment, without questions, simply being there. Mia sat in Victor's arms, now just turned 2, wearing a sweet white dress and clutching the teddy bear Uncle Vic had secretly bought her, waving at her mother with a wide grin, showing no trace of the horror from 6 months earlier. Children healed quickly, adults took longer, but Olivia was getting there. The wedding was intimate, attended only by Elena, Victor, Maria, and a few of the Cross family's closest confidants. Olivia had no relatives left of her own, yet as she looked around the flower-filled garden at the smiling faces, she realized she had found a new family, a strange one with a Mafia boss, a frail but unbreakable sister, and a scarred Russian bodyguard who melted whenever Mia laughed. Imperfect but hers, when Damien slipped the ring onto her finger, Olivia looked into his deep gray eyes and saw her future there. A future with shadows and danger because Damien's world would never truly change, but also a future with safety, with love, with a man who would burn the world to protect her and her daughter. She could accept the darkness if it came with this kind of light. That night, after Mia had fallen asleep in her toy-filled room, Olivia lay in Damien's arms on the bed that now belonged to them both, listening to his steady heartbeat beneath her cheek, feeling the warmth and strength of his embrace, and softly asked if he had ever imagined that a wrong number text would lead to all of this. Damien was quiet for a moment, his hand gently stroking her hair, saying he did not believe in fate, but that on that night, when he saw her message, something stopped him from deleting it. Perhaps memories of his mother, perhaps a loneliness he never admitted, or perhaps, just perhaps, the universe knew they needed each other. Olivia smiled in the darkness, tightening her arms around his waist, thinking of the desperate girl she had been 6 months earlier, sitting in a leaking apartment with 93 cents in her account and a sick child, typing a plea for help to someone she thought was her brother. That girl would never have believed that a tiny mistake like one wrong digit could change her entire life. But life was strange that way. Sometimes mistakes were not mistakes at all. Sometimes they were doors leading us to where we truly belonged. And sometimes the devil in the darkness was the angel we needed. Olivia closed her eyes, listening to the distant sound of the ocean through the window, feeling the steady breathing of the man beside her. And for the first time in her life, she felt she was home. The story of Olivia and Damien came to an end, but the lesson it left behind continued to echo. Sometimes life pushes us to the very bottom, yet from the darkest place we find a light we never expected. Kindness can come from the most unlikely places, and true love does not always arrive in perfect form. What matters is never giving up hope, no matter how dark things seem, believing that the universe always finds a way to bring the right people into our lives at the right time, even if the path looks nothing like what we imagined. If this story touched your heart, please subscribe to our channel, like and share this video so more people can hear meaningful stories every day. We would love to know how you feel about Olivia and Damien's journey. Have you ever faced an unexpected situation that later turned out to be the best thing that ever happened to you? Share your story in the comments below. We are always ready to listen to the feelings deep in your heart. Thank you sincerely for staying with us until the end of the video. Wishing everyone watching good health, a joyful life, and a peaceful spirit every day. Remember that no matter how difficult life becomes, there is always light waiting ahead. Goodbye, and see you again in the next video.